Thank you very much, Stevie, and welcome along to the live panel as part of the Regional Development Programme brought to you tonight by Westmead Arts Office. We've got three people who are involved in the live industry who are going to tell us about basically what bands need to know about getting gigs, how bands can use live music to progress, what they're looking for from acts as well. We always start with what I call the LinkedIn question because there will be people in the room who are not in bands who are curious about kind of like career advice and career things. So I'm going to ask all three panelists, starting with you, Kaylee, just to kind of like say who you are, what you do, and what you did before this. What was your kind of like your career progression in the industry? Kaylee, over to you.
Hey guys, I work at UTA in as an agent in touring, and I did dance at uni and ended up interning at a very small independent agency that focused on electronic music. And then I went to work at Red Bull in their culture team for a little bit, helping them out with sort of live events and things like that. Realized very quickly that I didn't want to sell cans of Red Bull forever and work in marketing. And a boss that I work with very kindly said to me, I think you like music way too much to be working in marketing. I think you should go work in the music industry. So that's what I did. Somebody I met through the job that I was doing interning, I went and assisted him at Earth Agency, which is a fantastic independent agency, and was there for 7 years. And then moved over to UTA about 4 years ago.
Cool. So which acts do you work with at UTA? Like, and what are, who's on your roster?
My roster is very varied, actually. It's very much like my music taste to a T. So it's split down the middle between electronic acts that are more sort of based in like 140 garage, that sort of sound. So like Mia Koden, Lou North, that was formerly known as Sicaria, Pretty Girl, Yune Pinku. I do a lot of sort of live electronic crossover like Yune Pinku, Art School Girlfriend, Porridge, but then also do jazz acts like Emma Jean Thackeray, Joe Armand Jones, work with an incredible artist called Nika who's blowing up at the minute as well. So yeah, very varied.
Excellent, fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Simon, how are you? Say hello and tell us a bit about yourself.
How's it going? Hey Stevie. Thanks for having us on, guys. So yeah, Simon Merriman, I work at Singular Artists. I'm a director, a partner, and a founder here. Um, I also run Borderline Festival in Dublin. It's a showcase introducing event that happens every February. We just had our third event recently. It went down really well. I also manage an artist called Brookie that's really kind of going places at the minute. I started out in the industry, I'd say, God, it could be 13, 14 years ago. I kind of started out as a musician. That was my kind of bread and butter. That's what I kind of really spent a lot of my time on, and I gigged all over Ireland, in the UK, a bit in Europe too. Um, and I always knew that was my passion. I wanted to get into it. I didn't know fucking how. I had no clue. Um,
What was the band,
so
Simon?
I used to play in a band called Floyd Soul and the Wolf a long, long time ago, and another group called Turin, not Turin, Turin, the Irish word. Played drums in that and bass in another. I think we won the National Student Music Awards back in the day. I don't know if you were ever a judge at that, Jim. You might have been at some
Yeah.
stage.
Dave was involved that. Dave
Um,
was involved that.
yeah, I think De Laurentiis won year one, a
Yeah.
Wemper year two. We won it year three. Um, so yeah, I did that. Went to college. I didn't study music. I got great advice off my parents. My dad's also a musician. Said not to study music. Went into business and ended up doing a post grad in event management and PR, which at the time offered an internship at Aiken Promotions, which I went into and worked worked under some great promoters in there. One particular guy called Brent Berry. Kind of learned the ropes and just started out buying coffees for everyone. Started out as an intern buying coffees, doing basically whatever I could to learn as much as possible in the industry. Um, and yeah, went was at Aiken, did 9, 10 years there. COVID happened, and then we set up Singular Artists.
Okay, cool. So, like, give people in the room maybe some snapshot of the artists that Singular work within. Singular are promoters based in Dublin, and you promote kind of like gigs in traditional venues, and you also do festivals. Just give them a taste of some of the acts you work with, Simon.
So in terms of Irish, I've worked with Gillaband from the start. I work with Fontaines DC. Pillow Queens, New Dads, Sprints, etc., etc. In terms of international, I promote Krungbin, Mark Rebley. I worked with Kayla on Art School Girlfriend. I do some stuff with Alex as well. PD being one of, I think the last act we worked on together, and we'd Art School Girlfriend over at Borderline this year as well. So
Excellent
nice
stuff.
little
Well, listen,
crossover there.
we appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you very much, Simon. Alex, welcome along. How are you?
Good.
Tell us about yourself. Tell us about what you do, and tell us what you did before you did doing what you're doing right now.
Well, my name is Alex Duma. I'm an agent in the global touring department here at Creative Artists Agency. I'm based in Los Angeles. Um, I do I do shows in Europe, however. I'm an international agent, so most of my roster, I mean, I do some of it in the States, but most of my roster I do outside of the States. Just similar to Kaylee, in London, there's a group here that also does the same thing. My start, I grew up in the church and was the lead singer of a praise band, so that's how I kind of got into music. That's my lore. Kind of led me to going to, I did go to music school. So, sorry, Simon, but I got a business degree from Belmont University, which is a big US, it's in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a big, it's kind of like equivalent of Liverpool in the UK in terms of their music business program. So I got that. I interned a bunch of places there during college, much like Simon, buying coffees and shoveling paperwork. And then I got a job out of school doing corporate event buying. So I did that for about a year, and then through that I met all of the corporate event people. At every agency has, a person that handles corporate events. So through that I met them, and I realized I didn't want to do that. So I got an assistant job at what was then Paradigm, now
Oh, yeah.
well, then Wasserman, now Team. And so I did that for about a year, and then I moved over here 12 years ago, and met. I worked under a woman, and I still work with her, Marlene Tushy, pretty big agent for us here, and yeah, the rest is history. I kind of
Cool.
just worked the ranks here.
Cool. Give us an indication, give us a kind of example of some of the acts you work with currently.
Again, very all over the map. I do a bunch. I do all sorts of music acts, and so acts like I do work on in Europe, particularly. I work on Phoenix. I work on my big tour this summer is a farewell tour for Garbage, the '90s rock band. I do Billy Strings. I do a bunch of younger developing indie stuff like Sir Chloe. I did PD with Simon. This great act, John Robert, who's really going off on TikTok right now. Um, I just have this act, Sean Pond, we signed that's really going to be at Grayscape and really excited about. But then on my other hat is I do all of CA's international comedy touring. So my left, left brain. I do so that is like we have 200 comics and it's quite a big roster, but in reality, probably only 10% of that can really tour internationally at a level that's worth really, spending the time on it. So I love that someone like Billy Strings. Let's go. Yeah, so like I was in Ireland with Shane Gillis about a year ago. I did three arenas sold out. So yeah, we do Trevor Noah, Shane Gillis, Jimmy O Yang's one that's doing really popular right now. Um, literally all genre of comedy. So yeah, keeps me busy, but it definitely is not as time consuming as trying to get a festival offer from Simon or it's definitely you could do like three comedy tours in that time you'll get a festival offer. So it definitely is a bit different business.
Okay, excellent. Well, that's great. So it's great to have all three of you on board. So what we're going to do now is just kind of, I'd like to know basically how you find new acts. Kaylee, starting with you, like what's your process for finding new acts, and also how much bandwidth do you have for new acts coming through? I mean, like, and how long does it? How long do you kind of give it for an act to kind of when you sign an act, when you basically decide you're going to work with an act, to realize it's not going to work?
There's so many different ways that I come across acts, and I think when I was at an independent company, it was very much like me going out there and listening to so many different like playlists across Spotify and things like that, and like really just trusting my ears. And then I'd say as I moved towards like a more corporate company, my signals onto like which acts to take on and where I was getting my A&R tips from did change a little bit, just from the level of managers that I was working with, the conversations I was having with labels about, who they're signing, who they're excited about. So I'd say there's a lot that comes through tips and, like what's really moving at the minute on the ground level. And when I decide like what I'm going to take on, it really comes from if I love it. Like ultimately, I've got to live this act, talk about this act every single day. I've got to go to their shows, even if I've worked like a really, really long day, and I've got to go to their show in the evening. Like I want to go to that show and be excited about it, like that's it for me. Like I have to really, really love it and be able to talk about it and be really passionate about it as well. And then what else did you ask me? Sorry, there was
Well,
like three
that
questions.
and basically, I suppose what I'm asking then about as well, Kelly, is like the time you give an act, right? So you take on an act, and like how, like I mean, obviously there will be some acts that, like I mean, that will take off. There will be some acts will be a bit more of a slow burn. Do you have to justify your choices to the other agents? Is there like a weekly or bi-weekly meeting where basically people look at what like the diaries and things like that and see how it works on a company-wide basis?
It's very much like you're an individual entity. You need to take responsibility for like your own decisions within that, who you're signing, the time you're giving it. And for me, it's just about growth. And, artists will have off years and things like that and lulls and certain periods within their career where you need to get creative. And as long as I'm feeling the same energy from the team as I'm putting into it, then, I'm good to continue with that. The only time I tend to feel, like it's a good time to part ways is if I'm giving something more energy than I feel like the artist or the manager is giving.
Mm. Simon, as someone who's kind of like in the business of buying the acts from the likes of Alex and kind of Kaylee, maybe give the room an indication of kind of like, I mean, how how you see Irish acts rolling. I mean, is there a case that kind of like, I mean, Irish acts do well when it comes to attracting agents to sell them on? Are like our Irish acts kind of like me at getting the right agents? Like, how do they approach it? What's your view as someone who's actually buying and promoting the acts?
It's important to say that right now is probably one of the best times ever to be an Irish musician. Um, there's a lot of focus and attention on the Irish market, where as there wasn't as much, say, 10, 15 years ago. Look, and I believe 10, 15 years ago, the artists were as good. It's just now they're, I think I always look back on Iceland. Iceland had a moment, Sweden had a moment like in the last 10, 15 years, but and Ireland's going through that right now. But I do think I'm firmly a believer that this is going to stay and we're going to continue producing, which is really, which is great. For me, how I come across, sorry, you're going to say something, Jim?
Oh yeah, no, yeah, keep
Yeah.
going.
And for me, I think a way to find music on the ground in Ireland is very much through musicians, through managers, going to shows, often being in the crowd at a gig and just talking to other musicians. Like I went to once to watch at Whelan's and a couple of bands I wanted to check out. And I went there on my own. I ended up bumping into a couple of bands and musicians that I just vaguely knew, and I hung out with them for the night, and I got tips from them. So advice there is to go out, meet fellow musicians, support other artists, go to gigs. Like word of mouth is still probably one of the biggest things in Ireland anyway. For me, yeah, that would be one of the big things.
Okay. From your point of view, then in Los Angeles, Alex, like obviously CAA is a massive agency, like yeah, and it's got different kind of like being pillars throughout it as well. Is there kind of like a situation where there's a lot of kind of like the focus and the filters on people you already know that like me, you're trusting kind of like like attorneys you work with, you're trusting managers you worked with before, or is there a slush pile that operates when it comes to acts as well?
I think there are people that obviously I work at a big corporate company and I my lens is that we're there are relationships that go older than me in this business with people that are above me. So, of course, there's like respect and deference for those people. I would say that we obviously I'm sure UTA or William Morris or every agency has people that are always in their corner. And of course, um, uh, if they respect us, we respect them. So I think it's we spend time definitely covering those people, but I think we're in an era that we're a big company now, and I think when I started, we were about a third of the size we are now in terms of agents, and I think it's a big business. So I think there's lots of people that we don't know. And I think at my level, and obviously I know the people that we've worked with forever as well, but at my level, I'm now trying to meet people that we don't know. Like, because we don't need five agents, try and take the same manager out to lunch. It just, we have them covered. It's all good. I mean, I'm happy to do that if we want to go out, but I think it's more important I meet, you know, me and people at my level that, have recently been promoted in the last 10 years to meet the newer managers, next generation, and kind of push it forward that way.
Okay. So, Katie, how does it work then if you come across an act that you like? So so be it a kind of a tip from someone, a gig you've been at, or even just kind of like something you've come across on the playlist, you like this act. How does it work from that on in? Like, talk us a little bit about the approach, talk us a bit like what you're offering that act, and basically kind of like how it goes from there.
It really depends on like what level the act is at. Like if it's totally new and developing, I might just start a conversation at that point and see if I can, help. Because it's really important that as an agent, you're taking on an artist like at the right time in their career. You can definitely take them on too early, and obviously you can be too late to the party as well. But I think like yeah, just taking them on at that right moment and getting that sweet spot is ideal. And if it's an act that is having, meetings with all the agencies, which is definitely the case if it's a very well connected manager and they're doing their due diligence around all the agencies and shopping it around. At that point, we pull together a plan and a pitch based on the music and the timeline that we've been sent and really like cater to the team, to the artists, and make sure if it's an artist that's really interested in like brands, gaming, that sort of thing, we're pulling in all the right people into those meetings. And yeah, then at that point, bring the artist in, get to meet them and see if you catch a vibe and then present your ideas basically.
Okay. Are most of the acts you take on, or are all the acts you take on, do you already have a manager and a kind of a solicitor in place?
No, not always. I think particularly in electronic, there's not always like a manager
Right.
involved. And everything is getting earlier and earlier. I mean, Alex probably knows this as well and can and speak to this that everyone is jumping on things so early at this point. Like it's crazy. At the point like you wouldn't even need an agent, but people are signing things and snapping things up super quickly if it's like if something that's really, really hot and that everyone's talking about. So yeah.
Wow. So like I mean that's something that like in Asian world it's definitely been commented on that like a lot of acts are being signed to agencies who don't actually need an agent right now at all, but it's just trying to get ahead of everyone else.
Yeah, definitely. Like from my side, I'm sure
I
Alex
would
is
agree.
seeing the same. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So how does that then play for you, Simon, as a promoter? Like are you also kind of like in a race to kind of like I mean have those hot acts on the singular roster before they go to MCD or Akins or Pod or Foggy?
It's a good question, and it's funny. There's a couple of bands at the moment that I'm speaking to, and I would generally tell them to do a show themselves. And I think it's important for a band if they're going into Whelan's upstairs, 120 cap room, to sell that out on your own is a big achievement. But there's a lot that comes with putting on your own show, promoting a show, setting it up, dealing with the venue, selling tickets, marketing yourself, all that. I think personally that's an important thing for bands to learn. Part of the managing process, part of promoting. Um, I generally advise bands if they want to work with me, I'll say go out and if try and prove them. Maybe prove themselves is the wrong word, but just to go out and put on their own show and just like just learn from it. Um, I think that's a really important thing to do. And my advice would be do your own show first. Then a promoter being involved at a 120 cap show, there's not really much money in it either. And I think it's just better for a band or an artist at that level to try and do it themselves. Look, it doesn't always happen like that. If it's a really hot act, they may just want a promoter to get involved early days. But for acts at a certain level, I think it's healthier for the industry to and the artist, financially speaking, to do a show themselves.
Right, that's very good point there, Simon. Very good point. So the question is, you, Alex, on the back of that, do you know what I mean? It's like, is it hard for an agent to kind of say those things to a band that you may not need an agent right now, that like you're better off doing things yourself, because obviously the onus in places like CAA and UTA is to get in those hot acts.
It's a tough line. I think it's changed a lot in the last 5 years since COVID. I agree with Kaylee 100%. We are signing stuff that has never played a show. And I think that's difficult as an agent.
Whoa, whoa,
I
whoa, whoa,
typically,
whoa, 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 whoa. So you're signing acts that you've never seen play live because they've never played live.
particularly during COVID, I mean, we were signing stuff that we couldn't see live, right? I mean, so I think it's gotten a little better now, and I've learned a lot from signing acts that I've never seen live because turns out they weren't great live. So I think my current wave of stuff I want to sign, I need to know that it's viable in my world, because if it's good for a label that's putting out their music and is focused on that, that's fine. But if it's not a viable, touring act that people want to see, or puts on a show that people will go back to see, then they don't need me necessarily. I mean, there are acts that don't have agents that have these crazy huge listener bases. So it really just depends. But yeah, I think it's tough. I think managing an act's expectation is an agent's job. I mean, but there's a way to do it, and I think as long as you're upfront, and I was with an act last night that it's too early, like, but they need an agent, and it's me against every other agency. So why do I like? Should I say no? It's kind of it's a tough question, because in the end of the day, you need to be upfront with the manager who is managing the act that hires us, and so I think you just have to be upfront. I mean, other agents will be, oh, we'll get you on this, we'll do that, and it's like maybe it's not right for the act. And I think our business, there's a lot of people that will say they do stuff and then it doesn't happen. So I think being really frank with artists in general is important, because it gets everyone in a bad situation when
Yeah.
things are promised, or if people are told this is what you're going to do, and then it doesn't happen. So I think as long as you're upfront, you should be able to sign anyone at any level, because you're all on the same page. You're kind of in the boat together. It's when people don't like that situation that people get fired, or agents leave, or so I think as long as you're upfront, it generally works itself out.
Okay, excellent. There's been a run of really good kind of like comments from all of you there, and I want to kind of continue with something that kind of like Alex raised, going back to you, Kelly, and it's about expectations. And when you found an act that you're obsessed with, and you think you can work with, what are you looking for from that act? When you ask the questions, when you have those initial meetings, what are the things that kind of make you go, okay, I've made the right move here, and what are the red flags you make you go, oh ho ho, I need to step back from this one.
I think it really depends on like their team, but when it comes down to the artist, it's having like ambition mixed with realistic expectations. So like you want to make sure that their ambition matches yours when it comes to like where they want to grow it to, and that they understand the steps that it will take to get there. That like if they want to sell out, a Brixton Academy, that it's going to take some work to get there and some steps to get there, and that they understand that it's not going to come, overnight. And just on that last point as well, I think in like the TikTok era is when you're seeing acts signed that are like bedroom acts, and you can see they've got like potential, and their, following has like really, really grown. And then they get snapped up because, they've had all these viral moments. And I think when you make a decision as an agent, if you're going to take that on, is if they've got the right team behind them, if they've got that manager that's going to get them, banging out rehearsals like week in, week out, to make sure that live show's spot on for when they have that first live opportunity.
Following on from the point that Kelly's just made, then kind of Simon, as someone whose job it is to kind of like sell those TikTok stars, talk us a little bit about selling a new act. How do you go about it? Because it's all very well to kind of like sell an act like kind of like Mean Geese or kind of like Chapel Roan right now because they're so hot. A new act coming through. You've taken in an act from UTA or CAA. How do you sell them? You've taken in a new act from kind of Westmeath. How do you sell them in a market like Dublin?
I think for such an early stage, look, it's very much a team effort. It's the promoter, the manager, the artist, the agent, the label, the venue. Everyone's getting behind the act, and I think it, it's it's everyone's going to be involved here. Look, you can be lucky and an act comes in, they put a post up, and it just boom, you sell 300 tickets, easy peasy. That's great, but it doesn't always happen like that. And you can get a band where, again, like you mentioned them there, Jim, Geese are a really good example of a band where their label stuck with them. They're on album three, I believe, now, with Cameron having done a solo record. And I remember when they came over to Dublin, first thing the show got pulled. They were the next big Fontaines, and it didn't happen. But that, that's a sign of a label really sticking with an artist long term.
Mm.
Um,
I mean, they're
but
also the
yeah,
only act ever to go from playing the Sound House to headlining the Electric Picnic. You know,
yeah,
and they played to 40
absolutely.
people in the Sound House. You know.
What a jump. You know what I mean? That never happens. But look, to jump around to go on, like if they were with a major, maybe that they wouldn't have been given their second or third album. So look, it's very much a case of everyone getting involved, everyone getting behind the artist. And that means their tour, or their, if you're doing a show in Westmeath or Dublin, whatever, you need a team of people who fully believe in you, and you have to believe in yourself as well as an artist. I think that's really, really important.
Well, have you found as well, Simon, that kind of like and this is actually a question for all of you, because because as an agent, you make your 10%, and as a promoter, you're making money from people selling tickets or people who are buying those acts. In terms of kind of like the ways an act gets known, like Katie talked there about kind of TikTok. Earlier on, Alex talked about kind of festivals. We'll come back to that. Media wise, Simon, what works or has media kind of has that went down as a number of outlets are closing, as a number of people are writing and talking about music is diminishing. Has that taken on less and less of a role compared to say kind of social media posts, compared to kind of like that organic push?
I think media still has a big part to play. Like looking at the Irish media, people are always on Nine or Nine. I think District is very much a current kind of publication that a lot of eyes are on. They're always posting about cool shit, like some of the acts I promote, like Nina Geraci. I had Armand and Hammer in last night. They're all over that stuff, and people do pay attention to them. Um, Look, some say print is a dying breed, but hot press is still there. I don't know if the younger generation are reading it as much, but no, I do believe it has a part to play. I suppose it's all on apps now as well. A lot of people are just subscribed to the Irish Times, and they'll pay attention to that.
Okay, great. I want to go back then to Alex, and this is something that kind of like Alex mentioned in passing, and I want to it ties in with what Stevie from FMC said at the start about kind of like the process behind acts and how they develop, and there's different levels which you come in. You mentioned festivals, Alex. You mentioned kind of like in jest, you said you're waiting for an offer to come in from Simon on festivals. Well, festivals have become a really, really big part of the industry ecosystem. Do you want to talk us a bit about like the good and the bad of that? Has it kind of created opportunities that you never imagined it would create for young, new, up and coming new acts, but also has it kind of has it queered the pitch? Has it got to a stage where it's messed things up?
Vessels are so annoying. I mean, as an agent, everybody wants them. Not everybody can have them. And I think acts get dangled them by promoters and agents. And look, booking acts on festivals and them having amazing slots, being side stage and watching that's why we do it, right? I mean, they're kind of like the peak pinnacle of a lot of shows, because the energy's crazy. They're not always your fans that were there. So yeah, I understand why people want them. I mean, I think for a long time pre-COVID, they were well, I want to start with also that, I mean, a lot of multi-genre festivals are not doing well. I think the current era of fans like what they like, and they don't like what they don't like, and they don't want to see it. They don't want to pay for it. So I don't know if that's exactly true in Ireland. I know Electric Picnic always does quite well, but we see it all over Europe and the rest of the world, and it's so festivals as a whole it's hit or miss. They're not all selling out. They're not all, so with that in mind, festival buyers have to buy the things that sell tickets that will bring people to go see it. Um, I think it's tough when it's a new act because you do need,
Yeah.
especially bringing foreign talent, or non-European talent to Europe. You need those festivals financially to make it make sense. But the act isn't selling tickets, so it's a really really tough conversation with, okay, well, the fee's good, but your slot's bad. You're at noon, or the fee's really bad, but the slot's great. It's you wait with the time you're playing on the stage, the slot. So I think it's a really tough balance, and to Simon's point, you should probably do a show first because getting what you want at a festival, you're never going to get it if you haven't already told people actually want to see me. You'll never, you can't overshoot for what you're worth at a festival. Festival buyers, it's just not, they don't do that. At least they don't anymore. I think maybe in the past they did, and people, were kind of used to that. But we're in an era. I mean, you look at all of the big festivals this summer, these are acts that sell tickets. Even like a Coachella, they went old school. They booked acts that have been around, and they sell 3 to 5 thousand tickets. So I think we're going to see more of that as the festival market it contracts a little bit because there were so many for a long time. But I think as long as festival sales are kind of where they are, the festival buyers are going to want more acts that are legitimately selling tickets, which as an agent is a fair conversation to have with the artist because you can't, if
Take
those
it.
are the rules of the game, those are the rules of the game. So I think it makes it easier for people to understand.
Okay. Okay. Back to London for a question for Kalia, because it's a question I can't ask Simon because he runs one of these. How important are kind of tastemaker festivals like the Great Escape, Eurosonic, and Borderline in breaking an act at the very start? Are they kind of like, as an agent, do you see them as value, or is it part of a circuit you need to be part of regardless?
I think it's like hugely, hugely valuable if you play it at the right time. Like the timing for those kind of things is everything. Like if you play it when you're not hot and like you play a show to the 15 festival months that I've like dragged across, but there's like no real audience there. And no matter how good the artist is, the show just feels a little bit flat, then it can do more harm than good, I'd say. But if you play it when, there's a little bit of buzz there or a lot of buzz there, then it can, change the trajectory of your career, I think. Like an artist that I represent, Grove, who Simon Sin and is incredible live. I put them on at a couple of these festivals like Great Escape, Reaper Barn, and things like that. And every festival booker that saw them at those events booked them after because they're so good live. The live
Mhm.
show is just super strong. And that was a really important part of their strategy and like timing that alongside releases. So I think, yeah, ultimately it is super important as long as you're timing it at the right times alongside campaigns to giving that artist the best possible chance of making the most out of that opportunity.
Mm. Back to you, Simon. This is kind of a money kind of question. I mean, have you seen sort of like, fees stabilizing? Like for a new act as well, kind of they want to get some money, but they're not known. So is that the job when you're kind of like negotiating with the likes of Kaylee or Alex for those acts? I mean, like obviously you have to make the kind of like money the balance sheet kind of like balance, whereas they need to get the most for the act. Is that conversation, has that kind of got stabilized, or do stratospheric fees not just apply to festival headliners, but also kind of those new up and coming hot acts as well?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think what can kind of help, say, acts at an early stage in their careers for something like Borderline, I'm offering a fee, but I'm also offering backline. And for an act that makes a huge difference. And when I was setting up Borderline, I spoke to a number of agents and managers at the time to get their thoughts, and that's kind of one bit of advice they said you need backline. And I think for a rock band coming in, two guitarists, a bassist, keyboards, synths, drums, that's you just can't travel with that. So to have that to offer a band helps if you have hotels, if you have ground or transport. It's the extras you can put on top, which which saves a lot of money for artists. Look, the fees are the fees. I think at certain introducing showcase events, there's only so much budget there. Especially when some of these showcase gigs, like Borderliner, ticket prices are so cheap. So for someone like me in my position, I just want to break even. That's all I'm looking to do. So you got to keep your costs down, but you have to keep the artists happy. Again, it's tricky, but you make it work and you do your best.
Okay. One last question for me, and I'm aware I should have asked this question ages ago. And I'm going to start with kind of like Katie. Actually, you probably can add this one up. What does an agent do on a day-to-day basis? Give us a kind of summary of what you did today from the time you went into the office first of all to right now. What was your day involved? Did it involve just lots of emails and lots of kind of phone calls? What was involved?
Literally just pulled my calendar up because today has felt like I've done a million things. But it started off like emails for, 45 minutes. Then we had our weekly electronic booking meetings. We all get in a meeting room and chat about like some key bookings that we've done in the last week. So that's something that I think, UTA do really, really well is information share. So we all bring stuff to the table that will help other agents and, let them know that certain festivals are booking and that I've got so many bookings off the back of those information share meetings. And then back to emails, then had like a catch up with Miss Banks' team, the label, everyone across that meeting, because we've got the album out this week. So it's just a catch up on there. And then had another artist call later today, and then an A&R call, and then meetings, and then this.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a good summary. A lot of emails, a lot of meetings and stuff like that. Last question for me. This is kind of like me. So starting with Alex, and then I'll go around the room. Alex, what if you had to give one piece of advice to a young band from Westmeath looking for an agent, and they kind of like me, what would it be?
That's a huge question there, Jim.
Ah,
Um, uh,
just one piece of advice. No, one
I
piece of.
would I would suggest being good. How about that? We'll start with that. Yeah, I mean, I think, people truly, I it sounds really douchey, but I think people really need to focus on their craft. I think people, I think a lot of younger artists want to be famous, but they don't spend their 10,000 hours, kind of developing what they do. And so it's good, it's decent, but you know, to think of a band like, that grinded like geese forever. They really really did the work, and I think it obviously shows, and they're having a massive moment. But that didn't happen overnight, and I think it's a bit of persistence. Because I think a lot of times, and I'm not trying to sound old, but I think younger generation, uh, if it doesn't work immediately, it's not going to work, which I think it's just persistence. I would always suggest. Yeah.
Excellent. That's great. Persistence from Alex. Simon, what about you? One piece of advice to a band looking for representation.
Yeah, to kind of mirror what Alex said, to hone your craft, you wanna be confident in yourself as well. Also believe in yourself. It's an important thing. But yeah, just really getting to the point where you're so on top of it, getting tight as fuck in your set when playing live. Just know what you're doing, and don't be unsure. Like I've seen artists go on stage where it's too early, and you're kind of even going to you see some artists at the Great Escape in Brighton where you're going, it's too early, you should be here next year. And just advice I give everyone who I work with, just don't rush. Take your time. It's so, so important. When you've gotten your chance, you want to be on it. You know what I mean? You want to know your lyrics, your guitar parts, whatever, just inside out.
Okay, excellent. Then we're back to London for the last word from Kaylee. So we've had persistence, we've had learn your craft. What are you going to add to the mix?
Yeah, I think both of those are super important. I think on Alex's point earlier about festivals really struggling, and obviously all artists are after those festival slots. The festivals that are doing well are the ones that are really sort of community driven as well and
Mm.
have built like a cult-like following, a community. And I think artists that are doing that at the minute, like building a little world around themselves in a really creative way, are the ones that are cutting through. So whether that's like like a band like Fat Dog who had no socials and was just going out hammering the live circuit, and through word of mouth, everyone was just getting onto them, and they really built their hard ticket value from just being an amazing band that built a cult following and a community from like being at the Windmill every other week to like an artist like Fliss that I work with, who's only got 2 songs out, but is incredible on socials and has built a whole cult fan base who are her divas. And she's got a really great aesthetic, so you can do it in so many different creative ways. But I think building like your community and your fan base and reaching them is really important.
Cool. I saw actually that with one of your acts as well, Amy Jean Thackeray. Between her 2 albums, she flipped it around, and the way she came on the second album was so strong. So, that's a perfect example of what you're talking about there. Cool. Thank you very much, the three of you, for your time and your insights. That was fantastic. So, Stevie, do we have questions from the audience here, or do I need from reading glasses? What have we got?
Yeah, we do have some questions, and just to say what Jim says. Well, thanks Simon, thanks Kaylee, and thanks Alex. It was excellent. There was a question that Jim you actually posed to Kaylee, about the day-to-day of a promoter. So, Lavina,
Question here, I see it now. I've caught up myself. So it's a question here from Lavinia for Simon. When organizing Borderline, do you reach bands, artists by managers, agents, open call, or any other process? That's specifically about the Borderline talent festival, which happens in February in Workman's and other venues.
Yeah, it's a mix of everything. Sometimes I'm dealing with an agent or a manager. Sometimes I will walk into the Windmill in Brixton or Whelan's upstairs, see an act. I love them. I book them myself. I've had acts on the bill the last couple of years where agents are calling me up going, "Do you have the contact?" Do you know what I mean? So it's it's a mixed bag. I try to go with my gut. If I think something's good and there's potential there, I'll reach out direct. I'm always reaching out direct to bands and artists. If I hear some music I like, on Breaking Tunes is a really good platform for that, and I highly recommend you guys get on that. SoundCloud as well. I know a load of managers and A&Rs that spend hours on SoundCloud just listening to stuff, trying to find new things. So
cool. Okay. Then there's a follow-up question from Lavinia as well, and that's kind of like, there's no such thing as a silly question, Lavinia, none whatsoever, and that's the hard differences between a promoter, agent, and manager. And also, the second part of the question is more important. Who's more important to have? Who's most important to have earlier on in that team? Katie, what do you reckon, Dom? Give us the hard differences between a promoter, agent, and manager, and who in your mind is the most. Are you going to say agent? Who's the most important person to have on board?
I'd definitely say it's not a silly question. Like my
No,
family have been
definitely.
doing this for, 13, 14 years, and they still don't know what I do. If I'm an agent, they're still like, "Oh, she's a manager." So like, don't worry about that at all. But an agent looks after the live side of an artist's career. So we'll look after live strategy, live touring, booking in headline shows, festivals, and things like that. I think who's most important to have earlier on, I would say a manager, just because they can you know, help you get into those rehearsal spaces, help connect you with agents, labels, and things like that. They are, I think, the best person to have on board, like first port of call.
Okay. What would you agree with that, Alex and Simon?
I wouldn't want to be a manager. It's a tough gig. I mean, Simon can tell you. It's 24 hours a day in all facets. I think we agents have the luxury of just doing one thing. And it can be repetitive, but yeah, managers, that's a tough gig. I don't want that one.
Okay. What about you then, Simon? Considering you cover them all, which is the most important for you? Do you reckon to be
Well,
for that someone should have in their corner? Even would it be a solicitor? Even would it be a lawyer?
I think for an act at such an early stage in their career, probably the easiest one to probably gain access to, I would think, is a promoter. And it could be a local promoter or an in-house booker at a venue. And look, it's always important. Say if you're outside of Dublin, you're based in Cork, Westmeath, wherever. I think it's always good to try focus on and find out the kind of where the main music scene is, and then there's always going to be a promoter. There's always going to be someone putting on gigs and shows, and try connect with them. Not necessarily asking for a gig. Go to the shows they're putting on. Ask them, do they want a beer, and try to grab them for 5 minutes. That's the best way to get to know some. So, do you want something for free? Buy a pint or a coffee. They're likely to say yes, and you'll grab them for 5 minutes, and you could get some key info off them their email address, or they might say, "Oh, you're a metal band. I'm not the right guy for you, but meet John from blah blah blah.
Yeah.
He can help you out." So I think finding out your local scene. It may not be in your town or city, but wherever the closest spot is, could be a pub or whatever.
Cool. Okay, great. So does anyone have any other questions for our panelists? Just unmute yourself if you want to talk to them, or else just put in the chat field. No, people from Westmead are very quiet then. That's grand. Okay, so if we've got no other questions, we may call it a night then. Will we, Stevie?
Yeah, sure, sure. And again, if anybody has any questions later on after the fact, you can just email me and I'm happy to pass on questions to the panelists as well.
Yeah, that was a very, very good panel. As I
Can
said,
I ask you a quick question, actually,
oh yeah,
please?
perfect.
Hey, sorry, I know you're probably sick of me asking questions the last 3 days, but my question's kind of to the whole panel, really. I'm in a band that's kind of just getting going down here in Cork, and we don't have like any of those agents, managers. That's why I was kind of confused, because I wasn't sure of the difference between them. But I'm kind of the one in the band that's looking into doing the cold emails, and I'm messaging the radio stations and doing all that kind of thing, and trying to go to the gigs and talk to people. But I suppose my question is that we're based in Laois, but there's some of us in Cork at the moment. The main music scene at the moment seems to be in Dublin, and we haven't really been able to break into that yet. If you're like to give advice for how to kind of get into Dublin where you don't really have any of those mutual connections up in that direction, would you say it's like to email like venues? Is it bookers? Like, what would your advice be to kind of break into those markets that aren't your home markets, pretty much? Sorry, that was a really long-winded way of asking.
It wasn't as long as my questions, Lavinia. So you're grand. So who wants to take that question? You want to take that one, Simon?
I think the first point of call is to comment on Cork, I think, and Limerick, and there's good scenes in each of those cities. Secondly, to answer your question, who to hit up, I know loads of small independent promoters who are putting on great shows in Dublin. The way to find them is go to the Workman's Club website, Grand Social, Whelan's. Look who's putting on shows. Find out who the promoters are. It may not be, look, Aiken, MCD, Singular, Foggy Notions. We're all putting on shows. Maybe they're not the promoters to hit up right away. Look, I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but there's guys and girls putting on shows in small venues. Like, look, go to Cobblestone in Dublin. They have a back room. Find out what the promoters are there, who they are. Go onto their Instagrams, hit them up. Another good way to get involved in the Dublin scene is look at up and coming Dublin bands, invite them down to Cork and do a show, or Laois. I guarantee you they bite your arm off to do that, and then you build up a friendship. You get invited to Dublin for their headline show. Boom, there's your foot in the door.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Really appreciate
Excellent.
it.
Did another question arrive in when I wasn't looking? Nope, just saying a great question. So that's great. So as Stevie said, by all means, fire off some emails overnight into if you've any more questions. But again, like I learned an awful lot from that panel, and when I learned something as an alpha, I always know it's a good panel. So big thanks to Simon, to Kaylee, and to Alex for their time and for coming along tonight. Thanks as well to our good friends in the Westmead office for kind of hosting us tonight. Tomorrow night we are in Laois. We're in Laois tomorrow night, and we're looking at the social media workshop, which will be done by Kieran Darcy from Warner Music at 6 o'clock. So that's it from me anyway. So Stevie, over to you to send them home sweating.
Yeah. So just to repeat what Jim said, basically, just thanks so much to our panelists. It was really great. Thanks for your time. Thanks, Alex, for coming back and then coming back again. I really appreciate that. Yeah, it was fantastic. It was really great. Loads of information there. As Jim said, we're back again tomorrow for another panel, social media and audience engagement. And yeah, feel free anyone to get in touch if you have any more questions after the fact. And if there's nothing else, I will see everyone tomorrow. Nice one. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, folks. Have a good